He parked legally, just outside his grandmother's house. A new car, a fresh job offer, a proud smile still hanging on his face. 30 seconds later, his cheek was slammed against the hood, cuffed, accused, surrounded. Not a question, not a warning, just a hand on his neck and a gun in his back. But then the officer ran his name, saw who his father was, and in that moment, everything crumbled. The silence said it all. Stick around, because what happened next exposed something much bigger than just a bad cop. This wasn't a mistake. It was a mirror held up to a system that had always looked the other way. And if this already infuriates you, hit that subscribe button, because by the end of this story, you'll see just how deep it goes. This is Malik Drayton, 23, graduated top of his class from an Ivy League school, a tech genius already courted by Fortune 500 companies. He had just flown back to surprise his grandmother, Esther, 81, church elder, widow, the woman who raised him when no one else would. He parked outside her home, Marigold District, middle of the week, no traffic, no drama, just peace. But within minutes, sirens, commands, shouts, and metal digging into his wrists. The officers said it was routine, just a stop, just a check. But something was off. Their eyes said more than their mouths ever could. And what started as a visit home turned into the moment everything unraveled. Inside the precinct, Malik sat cold on a bench, ink still wet on his fingerprints. Granger, the arresting officer, leaned in, smirking. Big man with a big degree, still ends up in cuffs like the rest of you. Malik didn't flinch, but his silence said more than 1,000 words. Then, boom, the double doors flew open. A man stepped in like a storm wrapped in a tailored coat, commanding, focused, unapologetic. Jericho Drayton, decorated federal prosecutor, national security advisor, and Malik's father. The room went silent. "You put cuffs on my son?" His voice didn't rise, it cut. Every officer froze. Granger's face lost all its color. Jericho's eyes scanned the room like a courtroom jury. No badge could protect them now. He pointed. "I want names, badge numbers, incident reports, because the moment you touched him, you touched me, and I don't lose in court." The air shifted. Power no longer wore a uniform. It stood in a $1,000 suit, demanding accountability. Still watching? Good. Because what Jericho says next doesn't just end a career, it sparks a reckoning. Hit that subscribe button, because if you think this was justice, you haven't seen the war it started. Granger stood stiff in the glare of Jericho Drayton's presence, still trying to salvage control, still clinging to authority. He fit the description, he muttered, a weak shield, a phrase scrubbed into countless police reports like bleach over bloodstains. Jericho didn't blink. "Which description?" he asked coldly. "No hoodie, no weapon, no erratic behavior. So tell me, what exactly did he fit?" Granger hesitated. Too long. Jericho stepped closer. "Where's the body cam footage?" The room tensed. Granger glanced to the side. Technical glitch. A lie. Obvious. Lazy. Jericho pulled out a slim folder from his coat. "So explain these patrol routes," he said, flipping through photos and timestamps, "because it looks like your car made 4 unauthorized turns before stumbling on my son." Silence again. But this time, it wasn't just fear. It was exposure. Suddenly, the officers watching weren't just quiet. They were nervous. And Malik noticed. Eyes darting. Some of these men knew something and weren't saying it. Remember that anonymous tip line? Turns out it wasn't anonymous to everyone. Some tips were flagged, filtered, routed straight to officers with history. And Granger, he was on the top of that list. But the question now wasn't just who arrested Malik. It was why him and why now. Outside the station, rain started falling. Inside, something else cracked. Officer Stone, quiet, always watching, approached Jericho. Voice low, hands trembling. "He's not the only one," Stone whispered. "Granger? He was following orders." Jericho leaned in. "From who?" Stone hesitated, then, "Captain Rourke. There's a system." And just like that, truth spilled. Granger, now seated and sweating, broke under pressure. He looked smaller now, stripped of the uniform's illusion. It was all numbers. Arrest stats, quotas. Jericho narrowed his eyes. Quotas based on what? Granger avoided his gaze. Race, black males, especially Marigold. It wasn't just targeting, it was planned. Each arrest lowered neighborhood scores. Each lowered score brought down home values. And that's when Orion Developments moved in. Low-ball offers, block buys, silent flips. They weren't just racists in uniform, they were business partners. Captain Rourke signed the orders. Orion cashed the checks. Granger and others climbed the ranks, promoted for each statistic they cuffed. It wasn't about crime, it was about control. And Malik? He was prime real estate collateral. Not a suspect, a tool. If this twist shocked you, share this story, because someone out there still believes this couldn't happen, and they need to hear it. What started with a traffic stop triggered a citywide quake. Jericho Drayton, armed with evidence and legacy, refused silence. He launched a full internal investigation. Subpoenas flew like wildfire. And then, boom. Captain Rourke, the architect of the quota scheme, was cuffed outside his gated home. Body cam footage leaked. Whispers turned to headlines. Orion Developments, unmasked. Luxury real estate barons, seen smiling in gala photos, now faced federal indictments. Emails, wire transfers, property schemes. Each file Jericho unearthed pulled another thread, until the entire city council began to unravel. Bribes, contracts, complicity. One by one, they crumbled. Resignations swept through City Hall. And Malik? He watched from his grandmother's porch as news vans lined the street. His name cleared, his dignity intact. Justice didn't come quietly, it roared. But the question lingers. Do you think this kind of corruption could be happening in your city? Comment your location below. Let's bring the shadows into the light. 3 years later. The precinct that once echoed with bias and brutality, now it's filled with laughter, healing, and hope. Because it's no longer a precinct, it's a community center. And walking through its doors every weekend is Malik, now a newly minted civil rights attorney. The same boy who was once booked without reason now fights for those without a voice. Esther, his grandmother, sits front row at his law school graduation, wiping tears with a handkerchief passed down through generations. Beside her stands Jericho, now police reform director. He's redesigned training from the ground up. Bias isn't ignored anymore, it's dismantled. This isn't just redemption, it's transformation. Most people will agree this is wrong and still stay silent, but the ones who speak up, they change cities. And Malik? He's just getting started. If this story moved you, if you believe in what could be when people refuse to stay silent, hit like, hit subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to remember, justice still matters.